Okay, my name is Santa Kumaran, representing Environmental Technical Division of IEM today. Okay, topic today, the title, Net Zero by 2050. Don't mistaken, yeah, it's not 50-50, but it's net zero by 2050. I believe everybody has the, what do you call, the flyer, the information prior to attend this meeting or this morning talk. Okay, just to give a brief introduction before I pass the, to our speaker today, Mr. C.K. Tang. Yeah? Malaysia also committed to be a zero emissions by 2050. This was from previous few prime ministers themselves. But what level is another issue. Sometimes the introduction very nice and very beautiful, but to what extent? For example, the big country like India, sometimes in, sometimes out. Sometimes they say they can comply, sometimes they say cannot. We understand because the country is very big, and their government also keep change every 5 years or sometimes before that. So for Malaysian context, yes, they committed. Also Petronas working hard to achieve. Even our TNB, Tenaga Nasional, the electrical board, also have pledged some renewable and many things because they know the fossil fuels are not there forever. Okay, in the world level, we have NADIDA. NADIDA is something to do with Denmark, their foreign ministry initiative. So Denmark is always there when come to energy issues. Okay, our attendance are keep increasing now. We have 116 participants. Okay, other countries that really working hard to this is actually France under the ADEME program. The key word is actually action. Action towards many things: food, mobility, constructions. Okay, everybody knows UNDP, UNEP. All right, that is a brief introduction today, just to warm up. Before I pass the to our speaker today, we have a very good caliber person who has wide experience, close to 30 years, and his name is C.K. Tang. He will give more introduction of himself, the things that we may not know that we want to know. Who is he? And because synopsis here is very short, it says he has so much of experience. We wanted to hear from himself, the man himself. He will start, of course, with introduction of himself before we go into the net zero by 2020. Net zero. What is net zero by 2020? Is actually emissions. Emissions of what? CO2 and many other unwanted gases and many other unwanted pollutions. So in short, carbon control. Carbon, we don't want to do anything to do with that. Every country is working hard for it. So Mr. C.K. Tang, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Time for me to keep silent. I pass the session to Mr. C.K. Tang. Okay, Mr. C.K. Tang.
Thanks, Santa, right? I just want to make sure that everyone can see the screen.
See, no problem.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so then I start. Good morning. Thanks for attending this. Net zero is a very big thing, I would say, in recent years, because we basically need to achieve it by 2050. If not, the climate will go haywire. So I was, from the introduction, I was told to give a little bit of a background about myself. I've been doing energy efficiency in buildings for almost 30 years. Okay, when I started in the 1990s, people were actually laughing at me, because energy in Malaysia was so cheap. Nobody bothers about energy efficiency at all. And in the year around turn of the century, things starts to get interesting. DANIDA, the Danish international assistance, that came into Malaysia and started the project, the Low Energy Office building project, the Ministry of Energy, Water and Communication at that point of time. And they engaged me as a local consultant because they were surprised to find someone local who is already working on these energy things, because it was brand new, in this region. So I got involved with them, and I spent 2 years in the Ministry of Energy, measuring everything in the building.
Sorry, which year was that, Ms. Tang? Which year was it? You mentioned just now the involvement just now.
That's the turn of the century. I think year 2000, 2001, 2002, around those times. Yeah, that was the Ministry of Energy was past the E45. That was when it was built, and I was actually doing a lot of simulation studies on buildings, and I can model the entire
Pusat
building.
Tenaga Malaysia? Was it through Pusat Tenaga Malaysia then?
Pusat Tenaga Malaysia was the second project. That was the attempted zero carbon project in the tropical climate. That was the first one. So the first one is this demonstration building, which is the Ministry of Energy right now. So if you go to that building, you will see that the building is one of the most efficient around that, compared to all the surrounding buildings nearby. So that is the first project. So the second project that I got involved on was the Pusat Tenaga Malaysia. That one is in Bangi. That's the first building we attempted to push it to zero energy, but we failed, but we got very close to zero. If you have visited the building,
which one is called the Zio building? Zio.
The PTM, the Pusat Tenaga Malaysia,
yes,
the one in Bangi.
Yeah. The other one is the Ministry of Finance, right?
The other one was the Ministry of Energy, and then we have a third one called the Diamond Building, the Suruhanjaya Tenaga. Suruhanjaya Tenaga, that is in Putrajaya as well. That building is right opposite the immigration. So there was three buildings, sort of demonstration projects to show that we can actually go very, very low energy in these buildings. And these are so-called, I would say these buildings are the forefront of net zero. They actually showcase what we can do to push energy down to at least 70% below average buildings. And then the remaining 30%, we can actually top it up with renewable energy and carbon offset. So this is what I'm going to talk about this morning. So just a little bit of history, going back nearly 30 years. Where I've been doing a lot of energy efficiency in buildings, and that's it. And in recent years, I've been doing a lot of work with international organizations. I've been doing work with UNDP. That was in the early 2010s. Okay, I think 2012, 2013. Which I actually wrote 2 books on energy efficiency in buildings: a passive design handbook guidebook and an active design guidebook. So these books are available free of charge. You can download it. I actually put it on my website. You can download it free of charge if you are interested in it. So that's those books there. And after I wrote those books, it actually got quite a big recognition worldwide. And UN actually engaged me to look into their facilities around the world. So with UN, I went to Jordan, went to India, went to China, went to Africa, looking into all their facilities and making recommendations on how to make it even more efficient. And not just on energy, but on energy waste, basically the whole package of sustainability. So I spent a few years doing those things, and until COVID came. And when the pandemic came, I was engaged by World Bank to write a primer on net zero, zero carbon building, basically, for low and middle income nations. And that project, we are partners with the WRI, with with the Danish Energy Management, with the Asian Clean Development, I think Asian Clean Development, I think that's it. So 4 of us are a partner in that project, and we actually spent the first month arguing what is net zero. And WRI are the more or less the founders of the GHG protocol, right? And so it shows you that even 2 years ago, we are unsure what is net zero, right? But once we argue 1 month, we got a clear understanding what is net zero, and we can move on. And this is what I'm going to share with you today, what is net zero for the most of us, all right? So that's the introduction I will give about myself, and I'm going to jump into my presentation. Okay. So on net zero in a nutshell, because 2 years ago it was very confusing for me, and I'm sure many of us are as confused as I am 2 years ago. So once I have this cleared, I want to share this all with everyone. Okay. So it's a confusing landscape once we talk about net zero, because there are so many players, so many terms. Okay, this page in here are all the major players of net zero. Some of us recognize symbols like Green Building Index if you are from the building industry, and the LEED. These are green buildings. Okay, these are green building ratings. It rates how energy efficient, water efficient, based site planning, indoor environment quality. It gives you a rating, and it tells you whether you are a silver, gold, or platinum building. Okay, these are subset of a net zero, because net zero is basically pushing your energy efficiency very low and putting renewable energy and then carbon offset. Okay. So that's the green ratings. You can see this here, the LEED and Green Building Index. Okay, then we have the World Resources Institute, which is WRI. World Resources Institute, they partnered with CDP in the 1990s to come up with the greenhouse gas protocol. Okay, I'm going to talk more about the greenhouse gas protocol later, because this is the basis of all our greenhouse gas emission calculation. The carbon accounting rules is all based on greenhouse gas protocol, or GHG protocol. Okay, after a while, then we actually had the Science-Based Target Initiative, SBTI. Some of you may have heard of it, and some of you may have heard of the GRI as well. The Bursa Malaysia requires public listed companies to publish their sustainability report, basically, and it's all based on GRI. Okay, GRI has some disclosure requirements to tell you how to write it, what you need to disclose, and all these things related to sustainability. And then we have the IFRS and ISSB. These are the accountants of world, you know, much like IEM. We have IEM is representing the engineers in Malaysia, and IEM is a member of the world body which represent all the engineers around the world. So these are the accounting bodies that represent the accounting people all over the world, and they are trying to get into this business of carbon accounting. So these boys are predicting, or they are actually aggressively promoting that eventually the accountants are not only doing financial accounting or auditing, they will also do carbon accounting and auditing. Okay, the accountants are trying to do that, so they're kind of trying to corner the market. Whether they will succeed or not, we have no idea. We just wait and see. Okay, they probably will. So the whole thing about going to net zero by 2050 is to stabilize the climate. This is based on the report from IPCC, the the International Panel of Climate Change Organization. So they basically did a projection of the carbon and climate change on Earth. By 2050, if we hit zero, there's a chance that by 2100, the Earth will stabilize. Okay, so this is the target. And this is why we need to go net zero. So the entire thing about greenhouse gas emission of going net zero is based on this accounting tool called the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. In short, is also known as the GHG protocol. Okay, GHG for greenhouse gas. It's used by 92%. This was 2 years old. But today, it's estimated that almost 95% of the companies and organizations in the world are using this tool as their carbon accounting tool. Okay, these rules basically. And in this GHG protocol, they are the one who define what is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. For those of you who are unfamiliar what is scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, okay, this is what it means. Scope 1 is direct emission. So if you have a company car that is consuming petrol, the carbon emission emitted by your petrol car is direct emission. So that is scope 1. Now, scope 2 is indirect emission. To most of us, the indirect emissions will be power or electricity from TNB. TNB would be from, because we are buying electricity from them, the emission is not at our source, but at the power plants at TNB. So it's called indirect emissions. So that's scope 2. So scope 1 and scope 2 is basically emission that is related to us, our businesses, and all the emissions related to that. Okay, that's linked to us directly. Now, scope 3 is where carbon emission of an organization normally blows up, okay, which is the value chain, which is your upstream and downstream, people who sell things to you, whatever you buy from them, the embodied carbon in there belongs to you, okay. So if you're committed to do scope 1, 2, and 3, this push you, the scope 3 will push you to do is to make sure that your upstream, the supplier that you're buying the things from, must go net zero as well, so that the product that sells to you has very low embodied carbon in it, okay, and it does not add to your organization carbon accounting. So it's not only upstream but downstream as well. So if you're selling a product like a car, okay, which actually producing a lot of carbon emission down the road, you have to estimate the lifetime of the car and how much carbon emission is actually emitted per year, and that adds on to your carbon accounting. Okay, you are responsible for that too. So upstream and downstream. So that's scope 3. So when I'm from the building industry, so this is how I present it to my clients, such as a property developer. So the upstream of a property developer are the embodied energy, which comes from the building materials, comes from the construction energy consumption, comes from the employee transportations, business travel, and all these things. So that is part of your scope 3 for upstream. So downstream would be their properties they sold. It can be the operational. So what it means is that if you are selling those properties, eventually by 2050, those properties must be net zero. So you're selling those houses must have a roadmap. By 2050, it will be net zero. So we're talking about net zero buildings that they develop and sell. Whatever investment they do also need to be going towards net zero. This is why, if you have not realized, a lot of banks these days are giving preferential loan to projects that are going net zero. Okay, so if you have taken the loan for normal businesses, it may cost you 6%, 7% interest rate. But if you go for a net zero project, it may cost you half of that, 3%, 4%. Okay, so there is a reduction in the interest rate so that they invest in a project that is actually going net zero. And all your lease assets as well. So if you are a company, let's say you are Google or you are Apple, and you are going to rent a property in Malaysia for your business, that property also needs to go net zero, because that is your downstream energy consumption. So basically, scope 3 will push everyone to go net zero. Basically, once you're committed to it, upstream, downstream have to go net zero in order to do business with you, basically. So that's on the GHG protocol. There are a lot more rules in there, about 600 pages of rules, how to do carbon accounting. Nothing too sophisticated. Any guy, any person, engineer, accountants, or anyone else, you read through all the rules, you follow it, you can play by these rules and do the carbon accounting easily. Okay, just have to spend a little bit of time to go through every part of the rules. Okay, so the next thing is that the GHG protocol, once you do the carbon accounting, it's a every year, right? The carbon accounting is just like financial accounting. You calculated how much carbon you have emitted this year, and then at the end of the report, you must say what you're going to do next year. Okay, what's your target next year? So when the GHG protocol was first published, it was published in the 1990s, late 1990s. A lot of big boys already are doing carbon calculation then. So then at the end of the report, when they say what they're going to do next year, most of them target only 1% reduction. Now, when we talk about 1% reduction, it will take 100 years before we even reduce it to zero, right? So they decided that, hey, this is not going to work. The IPCC says that we need to be net zero by 2050. So we need to change the target. We need the science-based target. So this is where it came from, the Science-Based Target Initiative. Okay. The Science-Based Target Initiative is basically add-on to GHG protocol. Okay, but this science-based target gives you a target. So you calculate your base year. Where first time you calculate your carbon emission of your organization or your company. So you have, let's say, 1 million tons of carbon emission per year. So that would be your base year. By 2030, we need to reduce that by almost half. Okay, and by 2050, it needs to go down to zero. That's what this science-based target is all about. It gives you a target how to achieve this. And for different industry, there is different pathway. Okay, what I've shown here, by 2030 is about 50% reduction. By 2050 is about 100% reduction. These are for services industry. But if you are, let's say, a cement industry, you have a different pathway. If you are oil and gas industry, that's also a different pathway. Okay, but for most businesses, this is the curve to be used. All right. So from now until 2030, we need to reduce approximately 50% of energy consumption or carbon emission. By 2050, we bring it down to zero. So there's a big reduction in these initial years, and then we can actually slow down a reduction over the next 20 years after 2030. So when some companies are already committed to SBTI. When they commit to SBTI, then you have to submit a report, this and that, and then they will evaluate it, and they will give you well, SBTI approved, okay, organization. That means that your organization has a roadmap that will go to net zero by 2050. Okay, so now let's get to the net zero roadmap. Okay, this net zero roadmap is developed for the services industry, not the cement or oil and gas or whatever. Okay, these are services for the majority of us. There's basically only three major pathways to go net zero. One is carbon offset, two is renewable energy, third is energy efficiency. So let's go through all these three major pathways. The first one is carbon offset. Carbon offset is basically buying a certificate. Okay, you practically pay money to own a certificate like these two up here. Okay, the two is a carbon offset certificate. You have this carbon certificate, you can show that, okay, my company has been has consumed 10 megawatt of electricity, and I have a renewable energy certificate from PNB that says that I bought it for 10 million as well. So I'm net zero. So you can do that. So the TNB is selling this called renewable energy certificate, or REC. It is a subset of carbon offset. Now, carbon offset certificate can be more than renewable energy. It can be stove campaign somewhere around the world that eliminate the use of charcoal. Okay, Instead, they use electric or maybe even gas has a reduction. Or it can be a forest project somewhere in the world, okay, that actually preserve the forest to make sure that the carbon is actually absorbed by the trees, and that will be how much per ton. So you can buy a carbon certificate. Okay, so basically a carbon certificate is you're paying someone else to reduce the carbon. Now, the advantages of a carbon offset is that it is actually quite cheap. The TNB selling the renewable energy cert, when it was launched, I think 2 years ago, is only 37 cents per kilowatt hour. So this is only a fraction of your electricity bill. Okay, so it's approximately 10%. So you pay 10% more and you carbon offset all your electricity consumption. When they launched it 2 years ago, they launched it in December. When I called up early February, it was fully subscribed. So they do not have any more rack to sell, REC. Okay. Now, it is cheap in this part of the region, 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour. But if you actually put it to a Europe price, it will cost us about 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, so we are actually paying about 50 cents for electricity as well. So whatever electricity price that you're paying at your building today or your factory, you're paying, let's say, 100,000 every month, you will have to pay another 100,000 to carbon offset it to zero. Okay. Now, where can you buy all this carbon offset? You can actually buy it online. You can buy it. There's a voluntary carbon market, which is Bursa Malaysia has actually opened it up. So I think every quarterly they will have a bidding. People can bid for all these carbon certificate. In euro right now, the cost of carbon certificate is about 80 euro per ton. In this region, it costs only about 10 to 15 USD per ton. Okay, now euro and USD are similar, so it's about the same. Okay, so it's a lot cheaper in this region to buy carbon offset because it's a free market. It's supply and demand. Okay, so the demand in Asia is actually low, but the thing is they can buy this certificate all over the world, right? You can trade it all over the world. You can trade it in Europe because the Europe price is higher, or the Europeans can actually start coming to the Asian region and start buying it at cheap rate. So that will eventually balance the price out. We have to buy carbon certificate from reputable organizations. All right, there are many out there. There are easily a dozen out there who are selling carbon cert. The reputable one right now is the Gold Standard and Vera. Vera is used by Bursa Malaysia as the standard of carbon offset certificates. Okay. Now that's the advantages. Now the disadvantages of a carbon offset cert is that this is a carbon tax. It is paid on top of your energy consumption. The more energy you consume, the more you pay. It is not making our company or organization more efficient or productive. Okay, you're actually throwing money away, right? It's a tax, you just throw it away. It is taking money away from our bonuses and dividends. And this is my own word. I say this is like a feel-good drug. Right? You pay to feel high. You know, you pay some money, you buy carbon offset. Oh, I've done my job. You know, I'm a carbon zero company. You know, to feel good about it. But in the end, it's a tax. You're actually paying for nothing. Okay. Now, the second method to go net zero is actually solar farm. Okay, for most organizations, you practically need a farm to go zero. Okay. Now, in Malaysia, the best renewable energy or the cheapest renewable energy you can get is actually solar photovoltaic. And if you put it on a roof or a flat rent, you have a rate of return up to 26%. Now, you take a loan from a bank for 5-6%, you have a rate of return 26%. That is very, very good profitability. If you look into any earnings report from all the public listed companies, anything above 10% is actually very good, right? And this offers you 26% return. So it is extremely good rate of return. Then I have with the project with World Bank, I had a look at it. What if we put it on a facade? Okay, so it's put it on vertical facade, and I found out that we still have a rate of return of 13%, although the reduction of power output or energy output from a vertical solar panel reduced by 50%. But the main thing is your returns, right? You invest this money in there, are you getting money back, and what is the return? And 13% is still very good. It's as good as any of the businesses out there, right? But that is under NEM. NEM is net energy metering. That means you are buying the electricity at the same price as you're selling the electricity, right? Or you are actually using all this electricity generated on the solar panel yourself. So you actually will get this kind of return. Now, if you are generating much more than you can use, and you have to export it, our Malaysian, the rules is that you have to go under NOAA program if you are not a residential. The net energy metering is only for residential. The NOAA program says that you sell electricity to TNB at IPP rates. You cannot sell them at the same price you buy electricity from them. So at IPP rates is about 20 cents to 22 cents, sometimes 25 cents. So it's around 20 cents. So your price that you're buying electricity from them is about 50 cents, but you're selling back at half the price. Now, when you're selling back at half the price, your rate of return drops down to 0. Now, bear in mind, 0 rate of return is still better than paying tax with carbon offset, right? Carbon offset, you're just paying, you can pay and pay and pay and pay. This one, at least you get a return and you do not earn anything from it, but you're not losing either, right? So carbon offset, you're losing. And this calculations are based on the price of 3,300 per kilowatt peak of solar PV, okay, for 10 meters square, okay, of area. Now, the last project that I work on with the 50 kilowatt peak installation, my price was 2,800 per kilowatt peak. So it's actually cheaper. So your rate of return is actually higher. So renewable energy is has good rate of return. Okay, you should just invest in it if there are opportunities for you to do it. Now the disadvantage is that once you add the land cost to it, this rate of returns actually drops. It depends on how much is the land cost, right? If it's near the city, it will be very expensive, then your rate of return may become quite bad. But if it's your own roof or you have a land that's unused, you put it on there, these are the rate of returns that you can be getting. The second disadvantage, if you have to cut down a forest to put in your solar farm, you know, the messaging is not right. And of course, there are licensing requirements in Malaysia. All the NEM NOVA are fixed with a 10 years contract with TNB. So after 10 years, TNB can say that, oh, we are not going to buy from you anymore. But because of the carbon offset, they may be interested to continue buying from you because they actually make money by selling the electricity that they buy from you to other consumers, and they make additional money by selling carbon offset. All right. So they may be interested to continue doing this business because it costs them nothing, right? The solar panel is invested by us, and TNB is just an intermediary selling the electricity for you and actually earning from carbon offset as well. So that's the second method. The third method, you can go carbon zero, is actually energy efficiency. When I did the work with the World Bank, I found out that the biggest chunk of energy reduction is actually from energy efficiency on all type of buildings, right? 50%, up to 50 to 80% of carbon emission reductions are achieved through energy efficiency. It's always the biggest contributor in any case. Okay, renewable energy can contribute about 10 to 50% energy reduction. And then the rest comes from carbon offset. And of all the case studies we have done for this project, only a minority needs carbon offset. Now, these are the high-rise, super high-rise buildings and buildings that are running more than the normal 8 to 10 hours daily, like shopping mall, hospitals running 24 hours, hotels running 24 hours. We will definitely need carbon offset. And the big super high density high-rise buildings, you will need carbon offset to go net zero. But for the small buildings, residential, low-rise, 1, 2 story, even up to 4 story, you can go net zero without having purchasing carbon offset. So is small businesses in small buildings, okay, shop lots and all these things, you can go net zero without having to buy carbon offset. But the key thing is energy efficiency is always the biggest contributor. Okay, now energy efficiency. I will talk about the disadvantages first. When we talk about energy efficiency, for an existing building, a total building retrofit is required. Okay, the budgetary requirement, I put here 150 ringgit per square foot. I think I should have actually changed that to 1/3 of a new building cost. Okay, if you look at the 1/3 of a new building cost, is practically all your M&E equipment. Okay, it is actually very high, right? You pay another 2/3, you get a new building, right? So you need to pay 1/3 of a new building cost. That's very high. But what people do not understand is that because we have to change the entire building M&E system, you know, we need to retrofit everything. You know, the old ways of doing things is no longer valid for net zero future. But what people do not understand is that all this equipment actually have a lifespan. All right. If you don't maintain it well, your lifespan of equipment, of your pump, your motor may be about 10 to 15 years. If you maintain it very well, you may have 20 to 30 years lifespans of all these things. So this budget that you require to change all these things, basically the same budget to replace all this equipment. It is not new budget. It is budget that you already have over the next 25 years. And net zero, we do not require it to happen tomorrow, but by 2050. So we have about approximately at least 30 years to work on this. 30, okay, less than 30 years now, 25 years, okay, to work on this. But from now until 25 years, all your equipment will break down at least once, okay? So if you plan it right, okay, you will actually reduce your capital cost in the building environment. Okay, if you do net zero correctly, you'll be focusing on reducing your cooling load first. You improve your lighting. You reduce the heat load from light. You reduce the heat load from your facade. You reduce the heat load from the equipment. You reduce your heat load from infiltration. Okay, then by the time you are done, your aircon size actually reduce up to 50%. So by the time you replace your aircon, the cost of your investment actually reduce by up to 50%. So over the 25 years period, we are actually reducing capital costs if you're doing net zero right, than business as usual. So if you're doing it as business as usual, oh, equipment spoil, the chiller spoils tomorrow, 100-ton chiller, I'll replace it with a 100-ton chiller, okay, with slightly higher efficiency. But if you do it right, the energy reduction is huge. Right. Now, what to get from this? What you gain is that you will actually lower your operating costs. You actually reduce your capital costs as well, and your whole company actually gain efficiency. You're spending less and gaining more. So when I did this for high rise, the perception is this: carbon offset. Oh, it's only a few. 1-2 million a year, okay, it's nothing. Renewable energy will cost me up to 5 million to install the renewable energy, okay. But carbon offset, you're paying every year, right? You're paying 1 million every year. That's quite a big chunk. You know, over 10 years is 10 million paid. Renewable energy, one-time cost, 5 million. But when they look at energy efficiency, the cost of replacing, retrofitting the entire building is 30 million. So it's actually huge, big difference. But once you get your concept right, that this is actually replacing the equipment that you have to replace anyway, all right, your energy efficiency cost can be negative if you do it right. If you don't do it right, the additional cost is just marginal. Okay, and I gave you an example of how a building can achieve this. Okay, because I'm from the building industry. But in a factory environment or in any environment, what we do is that we reduce, we look at the first principle first. Okay, we do not just replace the motor. So now you have a 10 kilowatt motor. I just replace a more efficient tank, another 10 kilowatt motor. Before I replace that motor, I'll start looking at what is this motor running. All right. Is there frictional losses? Is there a lot of weight? Okay, if we can reduce the weight, if we reduce the frictional losses, will the motor size actually become smaller? If it becomes smaller, then we can actually replace it with a smaller equipped motor by doing these things first. So we go, in short, we go first principle first in a net zero future. So we have to focus on the first principle, make that load as low as possible so that we can use a smaller motor or smaller heating equipment or smaller air conditioning equipment to be replaced eventually. And this will have a knock-on effect. We will create a lot of energy reduction. We are not talking about 10%, 20% energy reduction. If you do this right, with all this knock-on effect, will add up to 60, 70, 80% energy reduction in a building. Okay, just to give you a little bit of example in a building. Lighting. Okay, if you look at lighting, if you have seen those downlighters, those in the Milo tin kind of downlighters, the old one. Okay, now the light output ratio of all these Milo tin downlighters is less than 30%. About 25% of the lights actually comes out from that tin. 70% of the lights actually get lost inside the tin. It's gone, missing. The new LED lights, because they are directional, almost 100% of the light actually comes out of it. So if you replace your light bulb in there, normally a compact fluorescent with the LED bulb, you are still losing 70% of the light. It's not very efficient. So what we need to do, we need to replace the entire light fitting, throw away the entire downlighter, put in the new LED, flat, very flat piece of downlighter, and you actually achieve up to 80% energy reduction. So that's on just the lighting power consumption, right? Then we talk about equipment. Equipment, computers. If you have a big desktop computer, you consume about 80 to 90 watts. If you're using a small notebook, these days the most notebooks are very efficient. It's about only 10 or 15 watts. Now we are talking about 80-90% energy reduction. So that's energy reduction on lighting and your small power load. Now, another very interesting thing about air conditioning is because in air conditioning, we are all using pump and fans. Okay, even the chiller, there's a compressor in there. The compressor is basically a pump. Now, pump and fans has, to us engineers, there is a magical formula called affinity loss. Okay, which says that if you reduce one part of load, the pump and fan power reduced by a cubic factor. So if you reduce your load by 50%, your pump and fan energy reduced by 80%. Right. So if you reduce your lighting load by 80%, you reduce your small power load by 70-80%, then you reduce all your infiltration load and all the loads from the facade and all these things. So you reduce it by 50%, and your air conditioning load actually, air conditioning energy reduced by 80%. So this is where the magic comes in. This is how we achieve 60, 70, 80% energy reduction in buildings, factories, and so on. Okay, is this magic formula called affinity law. So in short, there's only one financially feasible roadmap to go net zero. Okay, for an existing building, we are talking about implementing passive elements first. Same thing, if you have a factory, okay, you look at the passive element first. You look at the weight, you look at the insulation, you look at the frictional losses. Okay, you fix all those things. Then you look at the active element, you improve on the motor, you improve on the small power, you improve on your lighting. Then only you start looking at the cooling system, the heating system, okay, the motor system, and all these things. And once you've done that, you look into your PV on the roof, PV on the facade, and then the very last thing you do is carbon offset, and that will lead you to zero carbon. Okay, I did this for an actual building over a 10 years period. By 2030, I show them a roadmap to go to zero. Basically, minor retrofit will bring them about 20% savings over a period of 2 years. And then the next 5 years, we do the major retrofit, which will bring 50% savings. And then we put PV on the facade, it will get another 10% savings, and carbon offset is only 20%. This is a high-rise building. The business as usual, the electricity bill will be 3 million a year. To go net zero, they will have to pay carbon offset 1.5 million. The minor retrofit 10 million, major retrofit 18, PV on facade 3 million. This will comes up to about 31 million. But your electricity bill is 600,000, and your carbon offset bill is only 300,000. So let's say it's about 1 million. Okay, compared to the business as usual, 4.5 minus 1, we are talking about at least 3.5 million savings a year over 10 years is 35 million. So that pays more or everything that we need to spend to retrofit the building. Now, this is an actual proposal that I'm seeing from all these so-called consultants out there. You see a lot of people who are doing this work right now. They are so-called environmental consultants, net zero consultants. They are not from engineering background. Actually, a lot of players are actually from the accounting background as well, accounting and businesses background. So if you look at what they propose, is that what they propose on energy efficiency is about 25%, and they say carbon offset 75% or more. So this is how they target to go net zero for most of these companies. It's just different, right? And because of this kind of work, Guardian has actually pointed it out that these are actually false claims. They are not doing their greenwashing. They're not doing this right. So they actually pointed it out. You know, even companies like Amazon, IKEA, Nestle, Unilever, you know, they are not doing net zero right. So if you follow BAU to roadmap to net zero, most likely you will do a one-to-one replacement. Your motor fail, you just replace it with a more efficient motor. Your chiller fail, you replace it with a more efficient chiller. Okay, your efficiency gain is minor, and you will end up with very high carbon offset costs. Or you can do this right by focusing on first principle first. Okay, and you reduce your capital costs, you reduce your operating costs, you reduce your carbon emission, and achieve net zero. And what is the value of this if you do it right? It's not only just monetary, because if you do this right, you get a lot of publicity as well. You know, you can sing and talk about it, that you are one of the first few companies that actually have an actual roadmap of achieving net zero, at even a lower cost than BAU. Okay, but the thing is this: the time to take action is now, not 2050, right? Because if your chiller breaks down tomorrow, it's not enough time for me to do anything. You know, I can't change your lighting, I can't change your load, I can't reduce your load. So you just have to change your chiller already. So you are not gaining from a proper roadmap, right? So, and of course, right now there are so many jargons out there. There are net zero goals, all the ESG report, all the events, but hardly anyone has taken any action. So what I'm proposing right now, let's start the roadmap, and we can start this journey to net zero. So this is my first part of my presentation. The second part is more on SBTI, so that you understand how, once you committed to this, how you can declare yourself to the world that you're going net zero. So I would like to open for question and answer now.
Well, thanks, Mr. Tang. A lot of information that we got today morning for the first half session. So the keyword that I can catch is actually act now, or at least by 2030, to see the results in 2050. This is what people don't realize, I mean, it's a bit cynical, but the actual fact is, we are not going to start this in 2050 because it says net zero 2050. It should have started 10 years back, maybe, when the first this thing was mooted, I believe so. There are a lot of seminars held, first in, I think, France, Denmark. These are the people, I mean, the countries actually, globally, they have started something like this even before that, but I can recall about 10 years back. Okay, Flo, any questions? Okay, while people preparing the questions, Mr. Tang, what was your role when you were this consultant for in the 2001 USA? What is your core job actually? You were a consultant, we all know, but the core job, how did you consult it then?
Okay, if you mean if I'm doing a net zero consultancy work, what is my core job today or in the past?
Before, previously.
Previously, I was doing a lot of energy efficiency projects with the governments. We talk about the Ministry of Energy. We talk about the Zero building, which is a attempted zero energy building. We did also did the Diamond building, and then after that we did a lot of the KKR too as well, the JKR building, the new tower.
I thought so. So I was just curious to know. Okay, that's fine. And one of the last points that you were talking just now, pertaining the energy efficiencies, actually, there are a lot of things can be saved through mechanical engineering and also the architecture of the building. So it goes by category. If it's an office building, definitely the appearance, the facade, whether it's made of glass or what are the materials comes first, and also the location and the direction of the building, then goes into the system. It is not the system first, I believe so, from what you have mentioned just now. It's deep knowledge required, deep knowledge of mechanical engineering, like pumps, motors, anything that producing heat, boilers, turbines, if people can design this item. Okay, nowadays got a lot of shortcuts, programming. But programming is good if the input is good. The programming is not going to work if the input is not good. So those days when I'm talking about the 30 years back, there are a lot of seniors. Okay, seniors, they may not be around now. They did a lot of things by paper, pencil, calculators, tables. Those days we don't even know what is zero emission, but they all did a good job. Otherwise, we won't be enjoying what we have today. But the thing is, from now until 2030 or 2050, we have to do something. It is not impossible from my point of view. Okay, any questions from the floor, or maybe you can elaborate what I said just now, Mr. Tang?
Oh yeah, we definitely have to start now, because if we start by 2030 or 2050, it's too late, and it will be too expensive. You imagine we have to spend 1/3 of a new building cost within the next 2 years. This is just a huge cost, 30 million. Where are they going to get 30 million from to retrofit the entire building? But if you actually spread it across 10 years, or if the building is actually already very old, you should be actually upgrading it to make sure your tenants actually stays. Now, the project that I actually work on for the proposal for the high rise is because the tenants actually asked for it. They asked for a roadmap to go net zero. And what is the building owner going to do to show that they're going net zero? Because those tenants in there, these are the multinationals. So the multinationals are actually driving this sort of the scope 3 for everyone to go net zero. So actually this year, from January 1st onwards, the products we export to Europe must show that we are actually going net zero as well. If you do not actually buy carbon offset to bring it down to zero, they will put their carbon tax on you. Okay, when they actually put it on you, your product becomes uncompetitive. So it's actually pushing everyone to go net zero. If we don't start preparing for it now, we will be unprepared. You know, there will be drivers out of business because we are not net zero. So it's actually very important for us to get into this right now immediately, because again the perception is that going net zero is going to be very expensive. Okay, the whole world.
Yeah, correct. The word expensive is because if they have any faulty designs, you're going to repair it or you're going to renovate now. Some of the things cannot be done. But you look at Kuala Lumpur or Dubai, look at the high-rise buildings, full of glasses, full of reflections from the sun. And the talks are by the activists, by the organizations, but it has not been passed on to the architecture and developer who looking at a different angle, the profitabilities, the beauty of it. You know, once they finish the 70-story building or 80-story building, the world tallest building, then you look at the building materials, how they actually constructed, and look at the systems, who designed the mechanical system, the building services systems. There are a lot of flaws over there. It cannot be repaired now because it's already up and it's consuming so much of energies. And how can the renewable energy can actually support this when it's like a leaking everywhere, like you pour water in a pot. There are a lot of leakages. And
A lot of holes everywhere. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, at least if the building is completed now, you still have the next 25 years to plan to replace everything, because all your equipment will fail in 25 years.
In fact,
So
in IEM, a lot of technical divisions actually championing this. We have lots of awareness program to IEM. We are pushing as much as possible from the professional side now, but the developers and the businessmen, the ideas that the provider of the ideas, they need more educations, you know.
yeah, you see, again, the businessmen, they will look at their profitability, right? And the perception is net zero is going to cost them a lot of money. They're not going to invest in it. Okay, if it's not necessary. But if you can actually shift the perception that it's actually cheaper and actually will grow your businesses, okay, and you're actually creating new market for yourself that you can sell to others. And imagine if your product now is net zero, you can sell it to this company at a lower cost because you are more efficient compared to your competitors, which is not net zero, and selling it at a higher cost. Okay, so we need to get our perception fixed, you know, correctly. This is actually the right way of going forward. You're actually saving the environment. You're actually reducing your cost of production because you're more efficient, and you actually has the advantage of selling it as a net zero product, which the people buy from you, they don't inherit your carbon anymore because it's at net zero. Otherwise, they buy it from the business as usual suppliers. They will inherit those carbons. So the world is changing now. Whether you jump it or you want to stay back and watch, it's up to them. But if you stay back and watch, it may be too late to go in and compete because you're not gaining the advantages anymore.
Okay, organizer, alert me if there's any question. From my dashboard here, there's no questions. And
no questions.
Participants can type in your questions. You look at your the right hand side column, they will have some question mark or something like that. So you can press that and write your questions. I will read your questions. Sometimes I read your name. Sometimes people would like to stay anonymous. I don't mind. And if there are a lot of questions like 50, 100, maybe I have a tough time to to select relevant questions. But today it's still early. Maybe they're waiting to the end of this presentation. Tang, maybe you can continue with your second session. It's already 10 o'clock.
Okay, I'll jump to the second section. Second section is more on science-based target initiative, SBTI. Once you committed to go net zero, you want to declare to the world, right? So that you can actually benefit from selling your organization. Hey, we are going to net zero, and these guys, these organizations, actually the WRI and CDP will say that, oh, we have evaluated your report and your roadmap, and you are on track to net zero. That's what the science-based target initiative basically says. Okay. So a lot of companies now are actually pledging net zero, and the pressure is only going to get more intense with time. The bankers are the one that are jumping very big into this. I'm not sure whether you realize that or not with the banks in Malaysia, but we are actually from Malaysian Green Building Council, where I'm quite active in that. I noticed a lot of banks are approaching us, asking us what we can help them with.
Mr. Tan, sorry to interrupt. Okay, I got the questions now. I think we pause. Let me read some of the questions. Maybe you can address them. Yeah? Okay. Okay, I don't want to mention the names. I hope you don't mind the people who ask the questions. Straight to the question. Any recommended guideline to establish the baseline? Okay, IR Yao actually. To me, net zero should have reference point to benchmark. I repeat, any recommended guideline to establish the baseline?
The SBTI, when you actually subscribe to it, they will tell you how to establish the baseline. And when I present it to you, you see that you have to establish your baseline within the 1 or 2 years you declared you are going to achieve SBTI or you are committed to SBTI. So once you do this, there will be your latest 1 or 2 years carbon accounting. Okay, you select it, carbon accounting, that will be your baseline. And by 2030, you need to achieve 50% reduction from this baseline. And by 2050, you need to reduce it by 0 from this baseline. So it's the latest 1 or 2 years once you commit to it.
Actually, there are a lot of questions I didn't realize earlier. I'll read it now one by one.
Okay, sure.
Will IEM furnish presentation? Of course, we will furnish towards the end. How to ensure the carbon offset system is implemented correctly and accurately? It's a big question.
Okay, how to implement it correctly? To the SBTI and the GHG protocol, it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, it's carbon accounting. It's just counting your carbon emission. So you need to achieve it in real life by hook or by crook. Okay. So through energy efficiency, you need to build up all your experience. Like I said earlier, we focus on the first principle first. Okay, we reduce our load. Okay, do we need so much heating load? Do we need so much cooling load? Do we need such a big power consumption on our motors? You know, can we reduce that? So once we reduce all these things, then by the time we change, the motors will be smaller and everything will be smaller. Then you can see all your carbon emissions drops. Your energy consumption also drops. So it's progressive. It's not something you just change your chiller, oh, you achieve it, you know, hands on, you know. The net zero isn't like that at all. Net zero, you have to really do it from the ground up, and you need to identify those items. And if you're not, you do not have the experience to do it, I do highly recommend engage people who have the experience to see all these things. Okay, it took me 30 years of my life to learn to see all these things in numbers. Okay, when I look at the equipment, I look at the cooling coil, when I look at all these things, I see numbers in my eyes because I spent all these years, you know, studying all these numbers. So it becomes natural to me to understand these things. So it is a lot of hard work. it's not the not so
Yeah,
straightforward.
definitely it's a lot of hard work. There are a lot of consultants doing it. You need to select the I mean, you need to do due diligence and find the right consultant to do. Actually, there are a lot of consultants. Okay.
Yeah.
The next question, actually, I had this question earlier, but Mr. Alex is asking this. How about the
Okay.
carbon set? How do the buyer or company can ensure that the carbon offset they bought is really contributing to the environment?
This is why I only recommend two on my slide, the gold standard and the Vera. These two are the biggest player, and they do have very strict methods and third-party auditors to make sure that the carbon reduction is real, and they do not actually double sell it. Okay, they only sell it once, right? So they reduce this and only sell one to one party, and they cannot sell to everyone. So these are the important things. Even though these are the recommended one, lately Vera has been criticized over their carbon offset cert for forests. Because of if you there are some articles on Guardians, basically they criticize the way that it is they account the carbon reduction of forests. So in the meantime, I would stay away from buying carbon offset certificate from forests until they clear up the mess.
Questions about chiller. I think this is more to mechanical engineering. To change an old chiller to a new energy efficient chiller existing building involve time. Okay, I think I skipped this question because it's very relevant to the mechanical engineering. Yeah, the new chiller definitely perform better than the old chiller if the old chiller have problem. It's all very subjective. Okay, the other question. This is Mohammed Khairi. You have mentioned that multinationals are driving the net zero. What can the government do to expedite to facilitate this process? I repeat the question. You have mentioned that multinationals are driving the net zero. Multinational, I think around the world, a lot of initiative from many countries, and of course, this initiative will be brought to the UNDP and UNDP and other organizations. So the question is related to that. What can the government, maybe Malaysian government is talking about, what can the government do, Malaysian government to move forward?
Oh, actually, they've done quite a lot. They actually provided incentive for renewable energy. You can actually get your tax deduction. That's why the rate of return is actually so good. They also give you tax incentive for energy efficiency. You replace a chiller with a higher efficiency chillers and all these things. You actually get it as well. So your rate of return is actually very, very high, especially from energy efficiency. In Malaysia, our rate of return on average for energy efficiency is we are talking about 100% or more. This means it's less than 1 year payback. Most implementations for the additional cost that you put in. So the government has already things in place to promote it. But the problem, I would say, is that is the awareness on the private sector to do this. Okay, so I think what we need to do, the government and the private sector need to do a lot more awareness that we need to start this journey right now. If we don't start it, we will lose the competitive advantage to be among the nations in the world that can provide products which are net zero at lower cost and better quality. I think that's what we need to do now. The tax incentive are already in place. It's just the awareness of it. I don't think a lot of people are aware that we need to go net zero, and a lot of people are not aware that we can go net zero today. We don't have to wait until 2050.
Yes. Yeah, we hope the minister now and will enhance whatever policy that it been made by the previous governments, not just 1-2 governments. I think for the past 10-20 years, they need to look into it again and come out with some better action plan. Of course, we hope for the announcement soon. I believe they are working hard. Okay, the other question is why engineers are now leading this kind of IM, but most of the time businessmen, accountants are leading. But it's very subjective. We hope engineers can learn the business, can do the accountings as well. We go to that question by Abdul Rahman. We go to the next question. Is there any incentive initiative by government, which is already answered in a way? For solar panels, there are incentives where you go through the either TNB or SC, the other energy organizations in Malaysia. We don't have
SEDA,
SEDA, correct.
SCDA, yeah, SEDA.
Correct.
Look at SEDA.
You can find out from the Google itself. People like us who involved in this line for a long time, we know there are a lot of incentives by many organizations in Malaysia. Okay, the other question. Back few years, people already start talking about smart building. Yes, we are still talking about it. We are still working hard with. This is the talk today. The whole talk today is regarding this, how people may be more innovative and come out with a new approach. That was by Said Salim. Okay, next question. How to verify the carbon offset certificate issued is valid and continue to be valid years after years? Big question.
Okay,
Tang?
the carbon certificate we buy is actually valid for 1 year. All right, so you buy the offset for this year. That's it, gone. So next year you have to buy a new certificate again. So it's not one certificate that will last many years down the road. So you practically buy it every year to offset whatever you have emitted. Okay, that's number one. Number two, how to make sure it's a valid certificate. I have two organizations to recommend to buy carbon certificate from, the Gold Standard and Vera. Okay. So there will be dozens of other companies out there, but these two right now, in my opinion, they are the leading ones which have proper auditing done and they do it properly.
Okay, the last question for the first session here, the last question. I mean, this question already been answered this is by Mr. Lee Cheong Boon asking, again, engineer's role and businessman's role, which has been addressed earlier. So engineers, how they can contribute. Obviously, it depends on the individual and the company they are working with. If they are business owner kind of engineers, participate more in this kind of government activities and also IEM activities, so you can get a lot of information through here. It means two ways, not asking and we provide answer. It's actually what you can provide to the societies and for the government as well. So it's nice 15 minutes question and answer. We go into the second session, Tang.
Yeah. I would actually add on to that I think engineers have to be more aggressive, because engineers has always been I think it's nature of engineers to be more passive. We are not the marketing people. The business people are the marketing people. They will go all out there and market the ideas, the things, and because we are too passive, we are not leading the way. So I guess I would suggest some of us here to be more aggressive and tell them, hey, the engineers are the one who will do this right, not the accountants. The accountants may be doing the accounting right for carbon, but if you want to do this right, you need the engineers. Okay, so let me continue on. Okay, so a lot of banks going to targeting net zero. Even insurers, asset owners, all these financial sectors, they're all driving. So who and what is SBTi? SBTi, the main players are actually the first two, CDP and the WRI, World Resources Institute. The Carbon Disclosure Project is actually all the big companies in the world. They are a subset of another organizations called World Sustainable Building Business Council, I think. Yeah. So these are all the world organization of big corporates. Okay, top 50 corporates in the world. Okay, so of course the smaller players are the WWF, UN Global Compact. So these are the founding partners of SBTi. So SBTi actually put two concepts together, which is the GHG protocol and the IPCC. I've talked a little bit about this. Basically, the roadmap is to achieve 50% reduction by 2030, approximately 80% by 2040, and 100% by 2050. Okay. And the roadmap, if you read the IPCC, you get a lot of all these maps for different industries. Okay, so they will have all these roadmaps that shows you, okay, if we do it aggressively, if we're not aggressive, if we are this and that. It gives you the probability of meeting our 1.5 degrees Celsius. So what are the chances and all these things? So it's all in the IPCC report if you want to read it. You have to talk a little bit about the GHG protocol. It started in the 1990s. Okay. Okay. Now, how do we go about doing this? First thing we do is that we need to set our corporate boundary. Okay. So when we calculate the base case of GHG calculation or GHG accounting, we have to the parent company must be the one doing all these calculations. So if you're a subsidiary, you must add it up to the parent company. So at the end of the day, it's the parent company that actually tells how much carbon emission they are producing. So it's not enough to be a subsidiary and declaring it. But a lot of companies today are doing the subsidiary first, scope 1 and scope 2, and they are preparing it. So they will add it all up to the parent company eventually. All right. So, but to do SBTI, the parent company must be the one subscribed to it. Okay, the subsidiary can't. Okay, then how do we decide? Okay, if subsidiary have joint ventures with others, you know, how much carbon actually belongs to you, how much carbon belongs to the other joint venture partners. So there are all these controls in there. Okay, whether it's equity share or whether it's operational control or financial control. So they have all these rules they can they have to subscribe to do the carbon calculation. So once you select the one method, you have to stay with that method for the rest of your accounting years. Okay. So there are some examples. Okay, whether it's hold by equity share or whether you're actually operating control of it. You know, you may be some subsidiary, maybe majority share may be held by company B, but company A is actually controlling everything. So then which control method, who owns the carbon emission from that subsidiary? So you need to declare this from the start. Once we declare all this from the start, then we play by this game. Okay, don't change it anymore. Okay, then we need to declare about our whether it's actually scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Now, scope 1, scope 2 is required for all organizations. Scope 3 is only required for those organizations with more than 500 employees. So if you're less than 500, scope 3 is not compulsory. All right, scope 3 is only for those big companies. So then you need to do it. Okay. Now, someone asked about this base year. The base year must be the latest 1 to 2 years before your submission of to SBTI to show your roadmap to net zero. All right. So once the base year is calculated, it is fixed already. Okay. Even though your businesses is growing very big. Okay. So it is still fixed. That's your base year. Okay. Then you have to do your accounting. Then this is where it gets into the more engineering. Okay, what is identify all the GHG sources from your business. Can be gas for cooking, can be car petrol, can be your electricity bill, can be your district cooling or district heating. Okay, then you select your calculation approach. You do your data collection. You apply the calculation. Then you roll it up to the parent company. Okay, what is the carbon emission? How much carbon per ton you are actually emitting? And once you have done that, okay, you have to develop a framework of quality check. How do you make sure these data are correct? Okay, so basically it's like ISO. You document everything, every step of the way. You document it so that you can data check it. You can do calculation check, units, formula, equations. You better do a back of envelope calculation check to make sure everything balanced. And then if you have uncertainties, how you estimate these uncertainties. So you may put in some statistical calculation method to show these uncertainties as well. Then once you have done all those things, then you have to describe your GHG reduction plan for the SBTI. So why what plans have you put in, why will it reduce, whether you're actually buying up companies which have lower carbon emission, or you are actually selling off the factories which are too high carbon emission and things like that. Or you close certain businesses which are too high very high carbon emission, or you have efficiency improvement, or you change your production level, or you change your estimation technologies, methodologies, and any other thing. Why is it reducing? Then you have to report on the methodology. The reporting methodology is very straightforward. There's an entire chapter. You just follow it. You have all these title. You have to describe your company. You have to describe your business boundary. You have to describe this. So you just follow it. It shouldn't be a big problem. There are many examples out there. You can download some examples of these reports and learn from it. So right now, all this SBTi and all this GHG protocol is done by the accountants, PwC, Deloitte, EY, you name it. All the big boys are already doing this for the big companies. Conduct verifications, you can do it internally or externally, but most people use an external consultant to verify all the numbers. Okay, so you will engage someone, okay, just to verify these numbers. You may go down to your plant, okay, to check the meters to make sure it's actually all the readings are correct, things like that. The main important thing in here is that materiality. Okay, everything you do, what materiality is it? How important is it? How related it is to the carbon emission calculation? Okay, will it cause a major error in this data if this data is wrong? So if it's within 2 to 5% error margin, okay, maybe it's acceptable. Maybe more than 5 is not acceptable. So things like that. Okay, and once you have done your baseline, then you have to set your SBTi target. Okay, the SBTi target is really provided via a spreadsheet. You can select what industry you are in. You can set your base year. You can tell this is base year, this is my carbon emission, and then you can say that, okay, in 3 years, what should be my reduction? In 5 years, what should be my reduction? In 10 years, what should be my reduction? So you can set all those things. And for SBTi, you need to declare at least a minimum of 5 years to a maximum of 15 years target. So they will not check after your initial submission. All right. Once you submit it, it says that, okay, within the next 5 years, we reduce by 30% or 50%. Okay, they will not check it. They will just check your base report. That's your target. But what SBTi requires you to do is to do this report annually, right, to show your progress towards this target. So you do it publicly. It can be on your website. It can be in your annual reports, in your AGM. Okay. So as long as you publicly declare it, that's it. That's all that you need to do. Okay. And then you describe the roadmap. The target, I think I'll skip through this, not so important. The cost of doing SBTi assessment. It costs you about 5,000 USD for 2 target assessment. You can submit one which is not complete, a partial one, and then 1 complete or 2 complete validations, up to you. Okay. Subsequent resubmission costs, if you fail during the first 2 assessment, you have to pay another 2,005 USD. Okay. If you are going net zero, they will actually charge you a little bit more, about 9,005. Okay. For SME, which are less than 500 employees, the cost is 1,000 only. Okay. So for small organization, you do not have to pay so much for this. And in fact, in third world countries, many third world countries can apply for waiver by answering a set of questionnaires. So let's say you are a very poor country in Africa, okay, you can actually answer this question and they can actually waive the fee totally. Timeline, okay. once you declare that you are going SBTI, you have 24 months to come up with a report and to get it validated and approved. But they say it's 24 months, you practically have 1 month, 1 year only, okay, 24 months, you only have 1 year, because 1 year, the next 1 year will be actually the assessment and all the ding dong, okay, they assess something not right, okay, you have to revamp it, you have to change it to their comments. So once is, so you practically have 1 year, okay, and you have to book the date 1 year in advance too, because if you look at the calendar, it's full already for the next 1 year. So there's so many people submitting all these things for them to evaluate. Okay. So the SBTI, the key process, first of all, what you need to do, you need to submit a letter, sign the letter of intent. There's a standard letter of intent up on your online already, download it. You just sign it, submit to them to say that you intend to go for SBTI target. And once you sign that, you can actually declare it publicly. You can go to newspaper, go to anywhere. Oh, we are committed to go SBTI. Okay, that's the commitment. Then you need to develop all the baseline and all the work. Okay, then once you have developed all this roadmap to net zero, you submit to them. They will actually vet it to say that, okay, what you have submitted is based on science-based method to reduce your carbon emission. Okay, they approve it. Then once they approve it, you have to communicate to all your stakeholders, this is how we're going to achieve this. And then you have to disclose this report every year. Okay, what is your carbon accounting, whether you're on track or off track. Okay. The next thing to share with you, the SBTI, after SBTI would be the ESG reporting by Bursa Malaysia. They are actually required public listed companies to report what they are doing in terms of the environment and sustainability for the world. So they are based on GRI. Okay. If you look at GRI, there are more than 100 plus disclosure that you need to do on environment. It can be energy use, can be greenhouse gas emission, biodiversity, waste management. On social, what is the labor practices, human rights, society, anti-corruption. These are the things on social. On economics, what are you doing to improve the whole economy of not only your company, but also your local community and the nation. All right. So the main thing is that the GRI says that you do not need to report on everything. There's 100 plus disclosure you need to report on. But the key word they use is materiality. Okay, how important it is, this disclosure it is to your business, then you report it. For example, if your building, you do not have effluents and wastewater, you do not need to report anything on that. There's no need for you to disclose anything on that, because that one is close to indoor water and indoor water will treat it. So how material it is for you to declare these things, basically. So some examples of the disclosures, you see GRI 201 is the economic performance. So 201-1 is direct economic value generated and distributed. So what your business has done to help economy. GRI 401 is employment. You've got to declare all your new employees, hires, and employees turnover, and what benefits you give to full-time employees or part-time employees and things like that, and parental leave and all these things. So basically, there's just this public disclosure that you need to provide to Bursa Malaysia. We are the GRI requirement. And then we have also the UN Sustainable Goals, Sustainable Development Goal, the UN SDG, which is basically 17 goals and 200 plus indicators. Now, a lot of UN SDG goals can be linked to the GRI. So there are, what I recommend is actually you look at into your SDG, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, pick those things that are most relevant to your companies, do those things, and then report it under GRI. Okay, so the GRI is just a reporting method, and then you should have most things covered, because GRI is very, very complex, right? It's about 200 plus disclosures. Okay, the SDG is only 70. Okay, so it's easier to focus. Okay, we are doing these things, and feed the information to GRI to report on everything else. And of course, carbon credit, there are a lot out there. Like I mentioned, there's the gold standard, the verified carbon standard, which is the Verra. There are all the other brands out there, okay, Pitland Co, Glen Viva, all these things. But in Bursa, Malaysia, we tie up with Verra, okay, for voluntary carbon market. So Verra is recognized in Malaysia. Another well-known standard is the gold standard. But Verra actually controls, I think, 60 to 70% of the global market. Okay, so they are the biggest market share. So the VCS framework for voluntary carbon, you have to design the project. If you are doing, say, a biomass project, producing electricity from biomass, you can actually then sell your carbon emission reduction. So, but then to do this, these are the framework that you need to run through. You need to design your project. What methodology are you going to use to quantify, monitor the emission reduction? And then you need to monitor and report it. Then you need the verification and certification via approved bodies. So in Malaysia, the approved bodies is SIRIM. So you have to eventually run to SIRIM and ask them to come and verify. So you actually establish your methodology first, you monitor and measure, then you ask SIRIM to come here to verify you have done everything according to what you write, what you have wrote. So once they're verified, then you register it with the VCS, with Verra or the gold standard, which will issue you a certificate, which you can then trade. Okay, then you take it to trade, you sell it, trade it well, then you can continue to improve it and sell more certificate as the year goes by. Okay, so that's it. So I hope with this, it gives you an overall view of the net zero, where the world is heading, and how you can get to be a part of it. Okay, let's open up for question and answers. That's all I have for today. Hello. Any question and answers? Any questions?
No question coming in yet.
Okay, we just wait a while then. So I hope I've given a good overview of how this net zero industry is progressing and moving.
Okay, no questions. Maybe I have some. Okay, this SBTI, okay, science-based, is a consultants, is it? There are a lot of consultants doing this, is it?
They are not consultants, right? They are the 4 organizations that I shown earlier, the CDP, the WRI. They are like Malaysia Green Building Council, or they are like IEM, okay, where the parties come together, create a tool for the world, for the market. And because SBTI are the original founders of GHG protocol, WRI is in there, so they get the support of UN Compact Development, is it? That one, UN, and also the WWF. So they have this body, they set up, you submit your net zero roadmap to them. They are the one who validate it.
Yeah, let's clarify further. Usually the organizations who are approaching this SBTI is to increase their profitability, I believe so.
Yes.
To have an efficient organization, you know, once they have an efficient organization, within the big business, they look forward for investors to come in, you know. It is not just to hang the certificate somewhere like you have presented earlier, but it's really like the roadmap that you have mentioned earlier. There's some kind of directions why they are involved in the zero emissions. All right. So there must be some drive for them, a group of engineers in the organization, together with the top management, set the roadmap, commit, develop, and then they approach the organization that you are mentioning, like SBTI, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Supposed to
Yeah.
submit to them, right? Who are they? Are
Yeah.
they in Malaysia?
Oh no, they are not in Malaysia. They are based in New York actually. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
they have to approach them through online or something, then have the
Yes.
communication. So that kind of something like that.
Yeah.
I believe there's some fees involved, maybe, or need to become a member or something like that.
No, but the fees I've already presented, they will cost you about 5,000 USD for big
Mm,
organization. For small organization, less than 500, it will cost you only 1,000 USD.
okay, let me read the
So you can
questions
submit.
now. Mhm. Okay. There's a question here by Engineer Hong. May
Okay.
I know if the company is not on track? If the company is not on track with the net zero carbon target within the time frame, do they will be disqualified by SBTI?
No,
That's the main question.
no, they won't. It's just that you are publicly declared that you are not on track. That's it.
Mhm.
So there is no penalty, no nothing. It's just I think self-embarrassment. You know that
Mhm.
you declare this roadmap and you cannot achieve it yourself.
Okay, the continuation, the same person, Engineer Hong.
Yeah.
Besides that, the SBTI and GRI are competing each other. Which platform is better to go for?
It's different, right? SBTI is namely going net zero. The GRI is just a disclosure, okay, which is actually the disclosure method embraced by our Bursa Malaysia. So public listed companies have to declare the GRI. Okay. Where else the SBTI you need to really do something to go to net zero. The GRI is just story writing. Okay, you have let's say a project in a small kampong, and you actually engage all the local communities to hire them to work as your supervisor, to work as all this construction. So you have contributed to the local communities. So
So
you
they have
write
to
this
tell the
story
right
about it.
story. They have to
Yes,
create a good
yes, it's a
story
story.
out of it.
Yeah,
A good
correct.
story to substantiate their work, their
Yes.
proposals. I believe so.
Yeah, or you have done because you are there, you actually help the local communities. You set up a tuition center for their kids, you know, to help the local communities. You have done this, you have done that, you know. So what have you done to help socially, environmentally, and economically?
Okay, there's a question by Mr. Zola again regarding Malaysia. Will
Yeah.
Malaysian government adopt SBTI for carbon reporting?
No, these are fully voluntary tools. This is
I
used by all the big organizations all around the world, but there's no compulsory. So in Malaysia, there are a few companies that I know have committed to SBTI. Gamuda, Axiata, what else? I think it's easily about a dozen companies, big companies, that have committed to SBTI in Malaysia. All big boys.
That's good. Next question. Most of example given approach in manufacturing, M&E, architect. How can construction field take part to reduce carbon credit or to achieve net zero beside paying the car? I think it's a similar approach. Maybe you can explain.
Yeah, for construction, you're talking maybe as a contractor. Contractor basically also reducing their carbon emission of their own in-house. If your officers in your site office, so you reduce all those things first. It's the same thing. You look at your lighting, you use daylight instead of electrical light. You use high efficiency computers, you use high efficiency air conditioning. All these things are standard. Then it comes to your construction. Right? Now, construction, that's where you inherit your scope 3. All the material that you actually purchase have to be low in carbon. So this is where you start to innovate. You need to look for materials which are lower in carbon emission. So for example, aerated lightweight concrete has lower carbon than, a lot lower carbon than clay brick, because clay brick you need to burn it in the oven. Okay, so there's a lot of carbon, embodied carbon embedded in that. So you use aerated lightweight concrete, you reduce your carbon emission. So these are the materials you can look at. If you are doing low rises houses, you may even start looking at earth block. Earth block, I've seen it in my projects overseas in India, in Africa. Our Malaysian clay is actually very good to make earth block. Okay, is you compress it. There are machines you can buy online. You bring it into here. You can use human to compress it, or you can use machine to compress it. You compress it, it becomes as solid as a brick. Okay, you have to compress it, let it dry. If those of you have visited the terracottas in China, if you look at the terracottas, in between all these soldiers, there are earth blocks, and these earth blocks have stand for 2,000 years. So these are solid walls. Okay. So those are the things you can start looking at as a contractor, and of course, contractor as well has carbon emission from all their machineries. Okay, so those machineries will eventually have to use electricity. So that's a roadmap you need to set in place.
Next is a statistical question. How many organizations have submitted for net zero 2050 by Mr. Quan Ching? How many?
Those who have submitted to SBTI, I think as of 2 years ago, when I checked the numbers, there's at least 2,000 companies around the world committed to SBTI.
I think the list that I have is a 4751.
Okay, 4751. Okay,
4,751. I think probably this is the latest.
Latest one,
yeah, but you are right. The one under SBTI is actually 2430. Correct, 2,000 something.
Okay.
So
there are a lot of people who have committed but haven't submitted.
Yeah, taking actions are 4,700, but with SBTI is 2,400. The one committed for net zero commitment is 1,700. So around that statistics.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I've done some homework also.
Okay.
Well, it's an interesting topic. So the moment I know this topic, so I was very excited to learn more. So I went into a few websites, and few of my friends, they have actually also together with me interested. So we did some background study on this to understand further. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Next question is where is it? Is there any library resources for us to tap into to perform a comprehensive product life cycle analysis? This is by Mr. Lee Cheong-Yung.
Okay. Product life cycle analysis right now, the ISO standards has quite good methodology stated how you actually do it. The CRIM actually use the same method as well as the ISO. So actually you can contact CRIM. They will actually be able to guide you. These are the standards to use to do your life cycle analysis for which product that you are looking at. Okay, so there are different products manufacturers. So they will tell you, okay, for this product, these are the methodologies. And once you go through these methodologies, you actually have to pay CRIM to audit it as well. Okay, so once you CRIM audit it, then this is the carbon emission of your product.
Okay, there's a question by Mr. Hong An. May I know if we sell carbon offset of our renewable energy to others? Do GHG produced by greenhouse gas produced by us will increase on paper since we sell carbon offset to others?
Well, if you sold the carbon offset to others, then it doesn't belong to you anymore. Okay, so once let's say you have renewable energy, you use it on your own, you can create a certificate can get a third party in, create a certificate which you own. You claim this is a reduction. Okay, but once you sell the certificate belongs to someone else already. So you do not own that carbon reduction anymore.
Is there a different method for benchmarking for a normal company?
The method still remains the same, but for a smaller company, you only have to do scope 1 and scope 2, so your complexity actually reduced tremendously. So in fact, most companies that are committed to SBTi, when I talk to them, they are also doing scope 1 and scope 2 at this moment, because scope 3 is huge and very big and complex.
There's a question I think you answered earlier. Is net zero is voluntarily? Yes, it's a net zero. It's
Yeah,
voluntary
voluntary.
basis. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is by Mr. Tajul, IR Tajul. The other question is energy, is the registered energy efficiency manager required to be employed for such efficiency monitoring?
No. It's the net zero thing is fully voluntary, right? How you do it, they don't care. As long as when you do your carbon accounting, it shows that every year you're actually dropping. You're on the roadmap to zero. That's all you need to do. And you just publicly declare it. But how you do it, they don't really control you. The SBTi requires you to provide science-based methods to go to net zero, and that you do it once only. You submit it once and you follow that roadmap.
I think
So you don't need a RIM or any of these people. You don't. It's not necessary. But I do recommend you to get a professional in to look at it, because if you do not have a professional in to look at these things, most people will do the wrong things, because there are a lot of things people will sell you all kind of solutions out there. Some work, some do not work. So you have to know what works.
Okay, we are towards the end of the session. I think we have a lot of resourceful session today. A lot of eye openers for newcomers and for people who have wanted to get involved. I think it's a good polishing, refreshing their knowledge on this, and it's good to hear that a lot of things happening around the world to preserve our country, to conserve the energy, to maintain the green. It's all back to us at the end of the day. So we have to live on, pass it on to next generations. I believe so. If not because of our forefathers, we won't be enjoying what we have today. I strongly believe that. So whether it's accountant or engineers, it's all in the team when we develop something from so like what you presented just now. It's all setting up the goal from the early commitments and carry on. So again, Mr. Tang, you can make your closing remark on your side.
Yeah, my closing remark is that this is an introduction only, right? It's not the detail yet. There's a lot more details you can go into to learn. You can learn into carbon accounting, or you can learn into the details of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and generating carbon offset certificates to sell. So there's a lot more details in all those things. So I hope this introduction will inspire you to look into these things, because we do need to get to net zero by 2050 to have a chance for this our climate to stabilize. And without stabilizing the climate, you know, the disaster is happening everywhere. There's a forest fire every year. There's flooding every year all around the world. And one of the reasons why our floods are getting worse and worse is because of the higher air temperature that we are getting, even 1 degree higher. The air can absorb a lot more water. So when it rains, it's so much heavier. So this is why we need to we need to take this beyond just monitoring. It's actually is part of our journey to make this world a better place for everyone. We can't live as we in the past. We need to do better. Yeah. that's my last word for this session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sikina. We are really glad to have you today morning. As I said earlier, very resourceful and very, what do you call that, encouraging. So we may invite you further next time with another niche topics which is related to this one. I think today we had about 134 participants join today morning. So I think people look forward from Environmental Division IEM to learn more things. For the participants, your handouts are there. It's already uploaded. You can download it. Yeah, I think that's. Thank you very much again, Mr. Tang. For the participants, thank you very much for participating, and we look forward to serve you better in future. We will have a evaluation form later. Please fill in. Okay, Mr. Tang. Bye bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.